We're going to now focus on 3 things we learned over the last week in the Premier League. Head over to Pro Soccer Talk for this, because the 3 lads you see on the screen here, we do this for every single game, all season long, give our opinion, usually get slated for it, but we carry on anyway, regardless. I'm going to kick things off because I was at St Mary's to see the mighty Southampton beat Everton 2-0, hand them their first defeat of the season. I was basically sat on the Everton bench, so I really had to watch what was going on around me and try and figure out. But there was a lot of swearing, a lot of frustration. Andre Gomez is sat in front of me. Ancelotti was, at one point, him and Jordan Pickford were having an argument from 40, 50 yards away, which was entertaining, but not if you're an Everton fan, of course. But yeah, I learned that everyone, we were all on board the Everton hype train, right? Everybody was. Even Everton fans were trying hard not to be. But defensive issues were there from the get-go. Ancelotti was screaming at Michael Keane, Mina, the fullbacks to be focused on set pieces. And down the flanks, they got destroyed. Southampton with Bertrand and Walker-Peters totally isolated the 2 fullbacks. And in front of them, obviously, Alex Iwobi got hooked up at half-time on one wing, James Rodriguez on the other. They weren't helping out at all defensively. And again, that brings me to my second point. Iwobi and Sigurdsson were in the team, obviously missing Richarlison through injury. Ben Godfrey was playing out of position at right back because Seamus Coleman was out. So I learned that Everton have defensive issues that will really hold them back from being a top 6 or maybe even a top 14 this season. And I also learned that their squad isn't strong enough. 1 to 11, they're a really good team. But just like Liverpool were under Jurgen Klopp in the first few seasons, as soon as they have a couple of injuries, these players coming in are almost, guys, for want of a better phrase, have just been left around, just hanging around from previous managers. Nobody else wants them, so they have to kind of use them, don't fit their philosophy. And yeah, I wrote a whole thing. I thought 4 things we learned that I actually wrote. I had a bonus one in there. So that's up on Pro Soccer Talk at NBCSports.com. But really enjoyed the game at St Mary's. Southampton were really good. Everton were really bad. And I'm going to finish with this by saying Bill Kenwright, the longtime Everton chairman, was sat behind me in the director's box. And his one comment and the second goal went in, "Oh, Blues, come on." That pretty much summed it up. And it sounded like he's had a lot of experience over the years. But let's not get too down on Everton. They're a good team. But I learned that there still are a few issues for them before we can talk about them being a top 4 challenger. So what else did you guys learn? Andy, I'm going to start with you.
Real quick, a point on Everton. That's a club that spent a lot of money in the last 5 years. Just go back and look at their transfer deals that they've done in the last 5 years. 50 million for Gylfi Sigurdsson, who you mentioned there. Hasn't really happened for him. They've, for as good as they've been this year, they've had some big misses in recent seasons. The thing I learned this weekend, I think that I learned, and I'll put a question mark on the end of it. Just kind of ... question mark at the end. Normalcy has returned in the Premier League in terms of the number of goals scored per game. Now, some of the results are still a little bit surprising, but we didn't have a single game all weekend with 4 goals or more. In the opening weekends of the season, I went back and looked at it here. We had 4 last weekend, 6 the weekend before that, 5 the weekend before that, and 6 the weekend before that. And we dropped off straight down to 0 over the weekend. Now, there was a little bit of a discussion on the post-game show on Monday between the 2 Robbies, and I think that I'm in pretty much agreement with what they said. The fact that I think some managers have looked at what's happened the first month and a half of the season and said, we can't go on like this all season. Fatigue is just going to become a huge issue for these players. And so we're going to have to do a little bit more rotation. I think we saw a number of teams do that on the weekend, some through injury, some through, personal choice. But just getting back and establishing themselves defensively to where that they can control games is going to be so important. And I think probably the first couple teams that kind of go through that process and come out the other side and are able to actually slow games down through a little bit of possession, a little bit better defensive shape, and just discipline. I think it's been a lack of discipline defensively the first month and a half of the season that's led to some of the crazy score lines that we've had. And so the first team that gets back to that might just have a leg up for a few weeks, that they're able to kind of establish themselves how they're going to play for the majority of this season, because that was unsustainable. Those first 5 weeks could not continue on for this season. Otherwise, we would have seen every individual, every team record smashed to pieces by by March. We really would have. So it was a little bit, maybe not as exciting, but I think it was refreshing this weekend to see kind of the tactical battle and not just, oh, who's going to score the last goal of the game? They're probably going to win this one.
Nick, what about you? What'd you learn, mate?
I learned that I don't know what to do with 3 of the top 4. And if you're someone who considers Leicester City part of that, then 4 of the top, whatever. I have confidence that for all their warts, Liverpool, Man City, and Spurs are going to be fine. There's depth there, there's system. The managers have experience, whether you like their experience or not, especially compared to Ole, Lampard, and Arteta. But let me focus on Manchester United and Chelsea. They combined for less than 1 expected goal in their game. Advanced goal stats said Christian Pulisic was the only one who was anywhere near scoring. And on the other side, there were other players. Mata had a good game, but it was all about Bruno Fernandes again. Now, you can have faith with that knowledge and with their talent that both teams will sort it out in attack. But I'm just not sure we're going to see anything worthwhile consistently from Manchester United. Plus, 6 letters, WTF VAR. That Harry Maguire call is among the worst I've ever seen. I just don't understand. If it happens on every play, then there should be a penalty on every play. That is a bear hug, and he wins the header by holding the guy down to put his head on the ball. I just don't get it, man. I don't get it.
That was Harry Maguire on the phone trying to stick up for himself, but clearly there's no excuse for that whatsoever because, yeah, that was the big one. I think we didn't want to spend all season talking about VAR. We're going to come back around to it, but we saw a few good weeks with okay decisions, but yeah, that one was mind-boggling. And then the red card for Luka Dean was a talking point. Abubakar Kamara. I just have a problem sometimes with the delays on if an incident happened while the ball's in play. VAR officials don't seem to take that much time to look at it, but if something happens and the ball goes out, then they have a few minutes. They tell the referee to stop, play. The ball is dead, and then they seem to come to better conclusions when they have longer to make those decisions. But United broke down the other end. I think Rashford went down in the box under a challenge, and they were too busy looking at that penalty decision than going back and looking at the other end.
Joe, they did it that's what's killing me. It feels like they did it better last year. Trent Alexander-Arnold, the big play, not on the whole, but think about that Man City play with Alexander-Arnold's handball before was it for Firmino from distance, right? Fabinho.
Yep.
They broke that down. I don't think they got it right, but they were able to do that sequence. And you're right. Everything, they're so worried about speed now. And that's it's probably been a directive, but we saw it work better in the past. So again, it is only year 2 of a brand new institution, but I hated the call. I don't know how you don't look at that.
I agree with you. I agree with that. So that's what we learned in the Premier League this week. And it was very interesting. Not quite as many goals or drama, but still tactically, it was very intriguing.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe. Make sure you subscribe to watch highlights all season long and always join us every weekend at 7 a.m. on NBCSN for Premier League mornings. Plus, make sure you subscribe to Peacock Premium as well, where you can watch exclusively live 175 games and same-day on-demand replays of all 380 Premier League matches as well.